So the unsweetened cranberry, the apple cider vinegar, and then the lemon juice, and put that in about 8 ounces of water and drink that first thing in the morning. You'll feel amazing. And then have that be your last drink at night, 2 hours before you go to bed, and you sleep like a baby. We've had patients who've been on like omeprazole or some type of proton pump inhibitor or antacid for decades, and they have acid reflux that's so severe they can't sleep. And then we get them on BPC, and it just completely allows them to get rid of some of those proton pump inhibitors or the antacids, and they start digesting food better. They start putting on muscle. They lose the inflammation. If you got your gut health. And so today, for those of you who've ever had issues with it, today we're going to talk about some solutions that can really change it and change it for good. But I think you'll also see that when we talk about gut health, there's probably some opportunities you have to generate energy.
Welcome everybody to the Health Accelerator Challenges. This is your host tonight, Cade Archibald, and really excited to be able to dive in with everyone this week. I missed you all last week. Sounds like you had an awesome session, dove into stem cell health and ways to promote stem cell proliferation and longevity. And the challenge last week, some of you, I know you were squinting, but it was no alcohol. Is that right, Regan?
That was it. Yeah. And I think, I think we had like there's no resistance on it. So hopefully it went pretty well for everybody.
Good. All right. Well done. All right. Well, let's. I'm excited to dive in today. Be diving in a little bit more on digestive health and some things there, and gut health. So let's jump in, Regan.
Cool. Well, first of all, did anyone have any questions, insights on stem cells, new things you'd like to learn on it, or that you thought about over the week? If you do, plug in your questions, and then what we're doing now is we're going to move on to the big trigger that I found is gut health. So how many of you have ever had issues with digestion? Anybody? and I think first of all, if you never have, I don't really believe you, but I think we've all either overeaten or we've had indigestion or we ate food. We're like, what was that? Or even oh man, the worst is food poisoning. Holy cow. I've had food poisoning way too many times, and it hurts, but gut health, Cade, what would you say some of the symptoms people should look out for when it comes to if they want to know if they have issues with gut health or not?
Yeah. So, you mentioned when you eat certain foods, maybe you notice bloating or just indigestion, acid reflux. Those would be some good indicators. The other one is even with slight food sensitivities, you can get skin issues, rash, things like that. That's my hand's 100% cleared up now. But that's something I've had to deal with for many years, and yeah, it's been nice to get things just completely resolved there.
And what do you notice that flares it up?
Gluten and dairy. They used to flare them up really bad, but actually I've been yogurt, things like that used to even flare me up. And now after I've kind of cleared things up and cleaned up my gut more, I can actually consume yogurt and not have the flare ups either. So that's been nice.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference if you got your gut health. And so today, for those of you who've ever had issues with it, today we're going to talk about some solutions that can really change it and change it for good. But I think you'll also see that when we talk about gut health, there's probably some opportunities you have to generate energy. So I'll share my screen here with you and give you guys some visuals. And once again, this is week 5, so we're making our way through. And some of the things we talked about, mitochondrial health. I don't know if you guys remember, we talked about nitric oxide and how to increase your nitric oxide production. And we talked about muscle span and strength span. So those are really important. Some of the peptides in the mitochondrial health, 5-amino-1-MQ, humanin, MOTC, but we also spoke about like adipatides. So you could get rid of some of those metabolically inactive fat cells on the muscle span, the ACE31, we presented that. Vascular inflammation. This is where you look at the circulation of your whole body. So if you've missed any of these, you can go back and listen to them. Do you know if they've been like the first 3? Are they on the podcast yet, Cade, or YouTube that you know?
No, they haven't been published yet. Still with the editors.
Okay, they're wondering how much of me they need to censor before it goes out. So you guys are getting the unedited version here. And then stem cell vitality, we went through that last week. And then today we're going to talk about gut health. And so what we're doing is we're building this ageless future operating system. And you notice there's a little bit of a theme where we're helping you understand some of the diagnostics, some of the treatments to remove the barriers. And then we're showing you ways you can unlock and rejuvenate your health by gaining new skills and having access to some of the world's best therapies. So as we talk about gut health, one of the things that is interesting is between the ages, at the age of 44 and then at 60, and then what we do in between, there's some very interesting things that happen with aging. So anyone have to get glasses at the age of 44 or in your 40s where suddenly you need readers? I know I see this a lot. Fortunately, I don't have to use readers, but I do have astigmatism in both eyes, so I do wear contacts. I need to get the surgery, and someday I will. But it's really, it's pretty common in our 40s is when, after about a decade of the universe trying to recycle you, that's when kind of some of these disease processes show up. And this is where you see higher incidences of cardiovascular disease, lipid metabolism starts to drop. You'll even see that your body's ability to tolerate alcohol and caffeine is much less. And, some people first thought, oh, this is from menopause. But actually what we've seen is there's other things that are going on. And we're going to talk about those things today, other interferences that are causing these issues, because, it impacts men the same way it does women, but it doesn't have to be you. And then the other thing that the researchers found is they looked into what happens again is as at the age of 40, we have this dramatic shift in our body's overall metabolic health and cardiometabolic health. But then at 60, you start to see the immune system get dysregulated and the kidney functions start to drop. We don't process carbohydrates as well. And then we have a steep decline in cardiovascular health. But once again, it doesn't have to be like that. There's very well-known cases of people from the ages of 60 into their 80s who have VO2 max scores in the 60s, which is phenomenal. The highest VO2 max score so far in the clinic is 58 from, ironically, a 58-year-old. Highest VO2 max. So so you imagine that he's going to go into like 70s, 80s, and if he keeps it up, I mean, his VO2 max should stay pretty darn close to that.
That's awesome. That's a great VO2 max number, 58 at the age of 58.
Yeah. Yeah, he is a beast. So why is this and what can we do about it? Well, one of the things that you'll find is the gut and your microbiome is so critical. Just like we talked about nitric oxide, how you turn off nitric oxide production just by using mouthwash. And I'm not saying don't brush your teeth. That's not what the research has found, or don't clean your mouth. But what happens is when you use like Listerine and some of the typical alcohol-based mouthwashes, the bacteria in your gut are responsible for increasing nitric oxide, and they're in tune to what's going on in your mouth, because your mouth is part of your microbiome, as is your entire gut and your skin. But the goal of this is I'm going to show you how to heal the gut lining, how to reduce dysbiosis, how to support a balanced microbiome for overall health, and then also show you some of the testing you can do to see if there's some systemic inflammation and immune dysregulation that comes from the gut. And then I'm going to introduce a new peptide to you guys today, but also show you how to heal the gut through peptides. We'll have a couple nutritional resources and get your overall health promoted. So let's jump in. So first of all, Cade stool test. Everybody's favorite. Why do they love it so much? I mean, how is it executed on? And it's really not that bad once you do it, but why would you say it's important?
Yes, it's really important because we can look at what's going on in your digestive system just by getting a little scoop on your poop.
That's it. And when you do this, there's 5 core things that we're looking at. Your maldigestion. And so what that means is, are you breaking down fats, proteins, carbohydrates effectively? We're looking at inflammation. And then we're also looking at dysbiosis. So, and that's kind of the theme today, but how off are your phylums in your gut? We'll look for infections and then metabolite imbalances. So let's take a little deeper look. So for those of you who've done stool tests with us, you probably have seen this. For those of you who haven't, your future looks really bright just by doing a little stool test. But you can see these patterns, and why it's important is because if you look at what ends up in the gut, this is where you go upstream, because by the time things reach the blood, it's already gone through the liver and through the whole metabolic process, and then it's those nutrients or hormones that get basically they bypass, they get processed, and then they end up in your bloodstream. But when you look at the gut, then you can see, well, why is your protein totals high, or maybe your blood-urea nitrogen's high, and that's because in this case the person's products of protein breakdown was a little bit low, or their fecal fats were low. So maybe they're not eating enough fats, or if your fecal fats are high, there's a good chance you're not breaking them down. And we see this in a lot of cases in people who have lost their gallbladder, had their gallbladder removed. And then if you look at the pancreatic elastase, you'll see, maybe it's time that you add in some digestive enzymes, or betaine hydrochloride, or bile salts, or one of my favorites is apple cider vinegar. And Cade, we've seen a lot of patients who love that apple cider vinegar drink with the unsweetened cranberry, the lemon juice. We just need to get that going again. So I think we need to serve that at the next retreat. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, we can do some. That's a great mocktail to sip on. It's actually it's tasty.
Yeah, especially if you put it in sparkling water. It's really good. Yeah, and now they make like the poppy drinks, or the what I can't remember the name of the other one, but there's a couple of good ones with a little apple cider vinegar, and then they have some prebiotics. So there's people are getting up to speed on what the body really needs. But for those of you who want to be adventurous, add in about an ounce of apple cider vinegar, and then about a tablespoon of unsweetened cranberry juice. You can go up to an ounce depending on what you're looking for, and then you want to have about a teaspoon of just like lemon juice. And so the unsweetened cranberry, the apple cider vinegar, and then the lemon juice, and put that in about 8 ounces of water and drink that first thing in the morning. You'll feel amazing. And then have that be your last drink at night, 2 hours before you go to bed, and you sleep like a baby. And that can help the whole digestive process. Digestive bitters are good for it too. The second category we'll look at is inflammation. And inflammation is really interesting because that's where you can see if there's a need for like a food sensitivity test. Like in this case, the secretory IgA is high. So you'll see that maybe a reaction to gluten or corn, or who knows what food could be causing it. Sometimes it's just if you're taking like ibuprofen, acetaminophen too frequently, you'll see these markers increase. You look at calprotectin, the eosinophil protein X, and then you also want to look for blood in the stool. All really important. And Cade, this is the most important. Like if you see skin issues, then the inflammation, it starts in the gut, because your gut lining is the same as the skin. It's interesting because it's just skin folded inside out. Think about it that way.
Really fascinating. Yeah. That's usually what we'll see so often. If there's like any sort of infection, dysbiosis, it's always shown up on the skin. Not always, very commonly.
Yeah, super common. And one of the new peptides, the lorazotide, we'll talk about this in a minute. But one of the things I think we'll want to do is look at the inflammation. And then if you can find, there's a couple studies on lorazotide, Cade. I don't know if you can find those, but I want to share that with you guys today, because you'll see these studies that are going on even with celiac patients who have been exposed to gluten. There's actually a peptide that can help support that. But some of the other things you can do, the zinc carnosine, the L-glutamine, quercetin, turmeric, omega-3s. These are all really important to help fix some of the inflammation. Slippery elm, aloe, diglyceride licorice is famous in Chinese medicine. And then we'll go to the next category, which is dysbiosis. And so in the dysbiosis category, that's where we find, like, is there an overgrowth of bacteria or yeast? And this is where we get into some of the longevity things. Like some of the markers, there's a bacteria that activate your GLP-1. There's Akkermansia that creates also more insulin sensitivity and GLP-1 activation. There's certain overgrowths like SIBO that can cause an increase in methane. And so you want to look at the variance, the abundance. And this is where we look at the pre and probiotics. We look at resistant starches, meal timing, increased fermented foods. And so that's the third category. The fourth is you want to look at your metabolic imbalance. So the short chain fatty acids and new butyrate concentration, these are pretty interesting because that's the food for the bacteria, and it actually shows how well your bacteria is being fed. So it goes in line with the dysbiotic imbalances. But then one thing that's looked at in the metabolic imbalance is this pathway called beta glucuronidase, and that shows if you're breaking down or unconjugating estrogens. And so for those of you who are on hormone replacement therapy, you want to be looking at this pathway, and then calcium D-glucarate can be a really popular treatment for that. So I think that would be something that you may want to consider. Do a gut test, but if you're noticing like, man, it's hard to get my hormones stabilized, I get on them and then things get all out of balance, and then just adding in a little calcium D-glucarate can go a long ways on that. So the final category is where we look for infections. And this is the fun place where we look for flukes, protozoa, tapeworm, parasites, overgrowth of yeast. It's the fun one, isn't it, Cade? Because, if you have critters, you want to get rid of them.
Yeah, definitely want to get rid of them. and they'll just wreak havoc in there. But yeah, and I think that's where, you look at antibiotics and they'll just kind of wipe everything out. And so they'll wipe out the critters as well as the things that you really need to have a healthy biome. So that's where antibiotics have been game changing from a medical perspective for like health over time, but then the overuse of them has created a lot of other downstream negative effects.
Yeah. And this is where, even some of the herbal things, they can wipe out good flora. And I don't think a lot of people realize this. Like you don't want to take berberine all the time. You want to cycle on, cycle off of it, just like anything, because berberine is antimicrobial. Oil of oregano is amazing, and I do take it, periodically. But it can do more harm than good if you don't keep it balanced. So if you look at the tests, one of the things you can do is BPC 157, because if you can heal the lining of the gut, then what you'll find is once you get rid of that inflammation, and just like BPC, for those of you who've ever had an injury and you inject that injured area with BPC, this stands for body protective complex, but it's probably one of the most popular peptides because it's been shown to treat patients who have colitis. One of the early studies, I believe, is out of Croatia, where they hold the patent for it. What they saw is that there was a reduction in their colitis symptoms. And now we say, okay, well, one of the things BPC 157 does is it helps heal the blood vessels, and it helps heal those endothelial cells. Some of the studies that they've done, they found that BPC 157, it breaks down in your liver. It helps regenerate the liver. In fact, in certain studies where they've seen with the hepatic portal vein severed in mice, they gave one group of mice BPC 157 in water, and the other group just had water. And the group that had the BPC 157, they actually had a remission. They actually recovered from this laceration in one of the most important veins in your body. BPC is also really important for angiogenic properties. It helps as it goes through your blood. It helps find areas in the muscles that are damaged or injured. And it's one of the best things you can do if you've ever had any kind of cardiovascular issues. And so BPC, I mean, we could talk about this the entire time, but really good peptide for the gut. And one of the things that you can do is you can use KPV with BPC 157. And there's a formula that New BioPro makes that has the stable version, the BPC 157 arginate, which is better BPC to take orally. Because a lot of BPC 157s out there, just not what they advertise. It's fragments of the molecule. It's not really doing a whole lot, but we've seen phenomenal things with the BPC arginate. You can use it orally. You can use it as an injection, iontophoresis. This is what Dr. Korth, he makes the patches with the electrodes that cause this transdermal circulation of BPC. And have you tried that yet, Cade? Or did you just do the glutathione patches that he's got?
Yeah, I've just done the glutathione and NAD patches. Have not done the BPC patches. It's the technology and the concept there is so cool though. So you can just absorb it right in through the skin, and you're just getting this like little healthy dose over 24 hours.
Yeah, it's a great way to get it in. And so BPC, it's like almost like the Swiss Army knives of peptides, because even for cognitive decline, it seems to help. And this is probably proof that if you ever wonder if the gut's important for your overall longevity and expression, then try going without BPC. And you'll notice if you have lower amounts, then your body just has a really hard time healing. It's almost like the BPC is that one molecule, just like, and that's probably the thing I love most about peptides is they're pleiotropic. So you go in and you fix one pathway, and then you have thousands of other pathways that get fixed. And so it's what drives researchers crazy, because you're trying to remove all the variables. But the way BPC 157 works is you're changing the expression of the blood vessels, and you're activating all those endothelial cells. And when you do that, if you think about the amount of blood supply that's in your gut, it's incredibly vascular. I mean, there's more nerves in your gut than there are nerves in your entire spinal cord, and by every nerve is a blood vessel. So this is just, it's the way that your brain gets fed is through these blood vessels. And BPC just creates an environment where the gut and the bacteria can actually start to thrive. And so just by using that, I mean, we've had patients who've been on like omeprazole or some type of proton pump inhibitor or antacid for decades, and they have acid reflux that's so severe they can't sleep. And then we get them on BPC, and it just completely it allows them to get rid of some of those proton pump inhibitors or the antacids, and they start digesting food better. They start putting on muscle. They lose the inflammation. So really cool peptide. LL37. Cade, what do you know about LL37? I mean, you talked about antibiotics earlier. So here's kind of a...
Yeah. So LL37, it's antimicrobial. And really good for immune intelligence, helping open up some of those pathways, as well as it can get like another thing that we've used it for is if someone like joint issues, if someone they've found arthritis, arthritic joints have significant amount of bacteria in them, and it can actually help there even with joint health. Really fascinating, but yeah, amazing at just clearing out some of the bacteria and the biofilms. That was the term I was looking for, right?
Yeah, that's it. And the interesting thing about LL37 is it's only made by humans. Like most mammals, like we're very similar. But LL37, they haven't identified it in any other species. And one thing, if you look at the studies, I've had a lot of you reach out like, hey, LL37 is in higher volumes in people with Alzheimer's. And so they think that LL37 caused the Alzheimer's. It's like they think it's this causative agent where it's actually there to remove some of that amyloid beta plaque. And if you think about what that plaque is, a lot of times there's infections in the brain, and that LL37 breaks through the biofilm, cleans out the brain. It also cleans up any kind of scar tissue. So if you've had surgery, and this is the phenomenal thing about peptides is LL37, I believe it's like 15 amino acid chains, but they're finding that it helps with burns, so you don't have the scarring. It helps internally if you've had any kind of ischemic issue, like if you've had a heart attack or a stroke or aneurysm. LL37 helps remove some of that scar tissue. Even if you inject it into a place where you've had surgery, you'll notice you can have a little bit better mobility. But at the same time, to Cade's point, it selectively targets those pathogens, and it doesn't. What they found is it's very selective, meaning it's not like an antibiotic where it wipes out everything. Even like if it's not a broad spectrum antibiotic that's selectively targeted, you're still removing a lot of great stuff. But LL37 seems to target yeast, viruses, and of course pathogenic bacteria, but it does really well with Lyme. And so Lyme disease, it buries itself in the fatty deposits in the brain, or it even gets in, like Babesia gets in, that sticks on your red blood cells and just soaks up the iron. It's a beast. LL37, they're doing studies now for like H. pylori in the gut. So this peptide is, hopefully we'll see in the future that this kind of takes place of a lot of these antibiotics that can be destructive. But I haven't seen it, and maybe I just haven't dosed it. Haven't seen it if someone's got a really high infection. I'm going to have to try it on myself, but I don't want to give myself an infection. But we probably need. I wonder how high the dosing is. And once again, this is where we're learning a lot about peptides. But this is a phenomenal peptide for the gut. And then the final peptide we're going to talk about is a new one that I promised we'd release today, and we mentioned it a few times. But this is lorazotide. And Cade, you had a little study that maybe you could talk about with this one, but lorazotide is interesting because what it does is the lorazotide acetate specifically, that makes the molecule more stable when you swallow it, but it helps tighten those gap junctions. It helps with the intestinal permeability. But the best thing it does is it blocks some of the gluten peptide transportation. So you don't have this immunogenic issue when it comes to gluten, and then that gluten protein doesn't cross that into the epithelium and trigger this immune response. And so they found with lorazotide, it decreases cytokines that is triggered with gluten exposure. But also it's very helpful in some of the patients with celiacs. But I'll let you. Let me stop sharing. Did you want to talk a little bit about that study, or or do you want to pull it up and we can share?
Yeah, I can post that in the chat there if you'd like me to. But this is, essentially the abstract just goes into very, very along the lines of what you just stated. But yeah, it's a single chain peptide of 8 amino acids. Acts as tight junction regulator to restore intestinal barrier function. So it's currently being studied. It's in phase 3 clinical trials, orally administered adult patients with celiacs as an adjunct therapy to enhance intestinal barrier function. So and then let's see how. The mechanism there that it works on, it's thought to act as a zonulin antagonist to reduce zonulin-induced increases in barriers permeability. So essentially reducing zonulin. So that's going to increase your barrier permeability or tighten up those gap junctures. And then it's been associated with redistribution and rearrangement of tight junction proteins and actin filaments to restore intestinal barrier function. It's been linked to inhibit myosin light chain kinase, which I'm not. What is inhibition of myosin light chain kinase? Anyway,
it's what's that?
Which likely reduces tension of actin filaments. So, essentially just helping tighten up those junction closures is what it's saying.
Yeah, because because the myosin is involved in muscle contraction. So I imagine it would probably help with the motility, the contractility, but and then that's also how you regulate that tight gap junction. So you only let what needs to be let out. So what a cool peptide. Holy cow.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah, looking at it they also did a study with the mice and pigs. So if you have any rodents as pets, lorazotide will just fix that digestive system right up, as well as in pigs for celiac disease and collagen-induced arthritis in mice.
Yeah, and this one is also been studied in humans, and I think it's pretty phenomenal. So one of the other names for lorazotide is AT1001. So take a look at lorazotide. It's oral based, so it's easy to take. And then some of the other things you can do is some of these lifestyle things. So yoga, Pilates, doing the twisting movements, getting your body relaxed. You can use Squatty Potty. Many of you have received those as gifts from us at East West. Squatty Potty gets your colon, because if your toilet seat's too high, like you're pinching off your body's ability to have a bowel movement. And I remember I had one of my friends on the podcast several years ago, and he said, "You want to poop as like your dog poops, like as fast as your dog poops." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And so, but it's hard to do it if your body mechanics aren't optimized for it. So you ideally want your toilet to be lower, or you just raise up your feet and change the angle of your colon, and you'll get a nice, great bowel movement. And then you can do some Pilates, some yoga before that. Some of the other things is you can get like some gut friendly meals, get some prebiotics. We've talked a lot about, work at getting that 25 grams of fiber. And then when you're eating your carbohydrates, ideally cook them the night before, let them cool, and then you can eat them that way. Get your kimchi, even jicama. Tempeh is a really good way of eating. It's more of a fermented soy versus just eating soy alone. Dandelions, and dandelions, I think next spring, like the dandelion is, like, as far as potassium goes, the beet greens and dandelions are just like loaded with potassium. It's crazy.
Wow. I had no idea that it had potassium in it. Interesting.
Yeah, it cleans out the liver. So a lot of good things to do when it comes to getting getting some gut foods. And then, the biggest thing is, also looking at how well your body is breaking down proteins, because when we're talking about the gut biome, we eat twice. Once is, for us, and the second time is for the gut. And one of the studies that we found is, and yes, we're biased towards beef, but one of the interesting studies that was published recently in the Clinical Journal of Nutrition, they looked at the muscle building effects or anabolic effects of beef patties versus the soy alternative meats. And so you see, what's that big one called? Like the Impossible Burger. I don't know if you've seen that, but they're making it look as close to meat as possible. But what they found in comparing like a soy-based alternative to the beef patties is that the beef patties resulted in a higher muscle protein synthesis compared to the soy-based alternative. And it was almost to the point where, unfortunately, if you're going to get all your protein from like vegetable sources, you've got to eat 30 to 40% more of it. So, when you look at your body weight, we want you eating 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So if you're 150 pounds, it's like 150 grams, unless it's in the, if you're eating like the vegan sources, then you're going to be closer to like 200 grams. And so the other thing they found in the beef is it had higher leucine content, and that leads to faster digestion rates of animal protein. And leucine is one of the leucine and isoleucine is what triggers some of that muscle growth. And so something you want to look at when it comes to your food. And then you can also do timed eating. Most of you, 12 hours is sufficient. Some of you who want to get lean down or want to increase your cardiometabolic rate, you can go 16-8, but doing a little bit of fasting is helpful. And then the biggest thing is do something for your mindset and your lifestyle, and come join our community at the next retreat, November 21st and then December 19th are what we've got remaining for this year. And so love to have you to one of our retreats. And Cade, maybe you could post for people, and we'll include it in the show notes as well, just like how they can register for a retreat. If you haven't, love to have you there. And then finally, let's jump into the challenge. this is the big one. It's get rid of the processed foods or ultra processed foods. Even if you're like, man, I still want to do my protein shake because that's technically processed, your protein powders. And I know there's a lot of healthy ones out there, but ideally, shift as many things to real whole foods as possible this week and see if it doesn't make a difference in the way you feel. Look at the energy of the food. Get rid of the things that are in packages and see if you don't feel a little bit better. So that's the challenge. Get rid of the processed foods. And we'll take some questions now, but
yeah, and those of you interested in attending a retreat, if you're listening to the audio version of this, it's acueastwest.com/retreats. You can get registered there, or at least request some additional information. Our team will reach out. If you're in a program, you're invited. That's one of the benefits of being in an Accelerate Wellness or Ageless Future program. You can go in and register for one of those in your program. So, I think that's like such a fun experience for people to go to, and something that will be really, really helpful for your digestive health in the long term, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And if not, you're going to have a bunch of peptides, and I promise you'll leave better, feeling better than when you came in. Like, it's a really fun time. But Cade, any takeaways from today?
I think you've talked a little bit to me about lorazotide in the past. I had no idea what the capabilities were there. Like, super fascinating. It's some great human studies as well as some, as usual, always some good animal studies. But really fascinating on how it can heal up leaky gut so well.
Yeah. Yeah, you get some better nutrient absorption. I think you guys like that one. If you haven't been on it, or if it's in your protocol, now you know what it's there for. And LL37, you're like, what is this? Is this a rap artist? No, that's LL Cool J. But LL37 is phenomenal. Then you got, like, we covered BPC, hopefully on some new veins for you guys. But yeah, really appreciate each one of you for being part of our community here. And so your challenge this week, and ideally keep it going, but look at foods and think of all the things you're eating that are processed and try to move those over to whole foods. Just start there. It's amazing the transformation that will happen in your life. So appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next week. Next week. Am I here next week?
Yeah, we'll be live next week, one way or the other.
I'll be flying. It's going to be Cade next week, but we got good things in store. Awesome.
Okay. All right. See you, everybody.